Good evening, my friends. This is the Grim Flayer, and I hope you are all doing very well tonight. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. We are a little bit ahead of the curve, but when you are as busy as I am in your personal life, you've got to take your windows where you have them. So we are doing the May deck tech in the end of April. I hope you'll forgive me, but we're also all excited about War of the Spark, and of course some new changes are being made to the 75 to the Golgari midrange list you all know and love, and they are new inclusions from War of the Spark. This deck tech is going to give you a rundown very quickly about those. So before we begin, we have 3 brand new patrons to thank, or I guess 3 patrons. 2 of them are brand new. The brand new ones are Stefano Chiari, who is an Inquisitor, and Jay Stout, who we'll call a High Inquisitor because he is in the Inquisitor tier, but has pledged more than the minimum. So thank you so much, Stefano and Jay, brand new patron supporters. And we also have to thank Tyler Evans, who has upgraded his level of support. Formerly an Inquisitor himself, Tyler is now a Confidant. So welcome to the fold, Tyler, and welcome to all other patrons. Thank you so much for supporting this content. I could not do it without you, and it means a whole lot to me. So what are we doing for the month of May with the new tools at our disposal with War of the Spark? Well, as you can see, we've got 62 cards in the main deck, but I actually have not changed anything in the main deck. The only change I've made is an aesthetic one, and it's, in my opinion, it's long overdue. So I got the Urza's Legacy Treetop Village. I finally got around to getting those, which, you know, just in my opinion, I love the old border lands, especially foil. Of course, I'm not really doing foils on here, but in person, foiling from this era is absolutely top-notch. And I believe when I bought into the deck, they were just simply out of stock of these regular print Urza's Legacy pieces, so I never got around to replacing them. And these Treetop Villages, with the heavy green, color palette, they've served us well. I have nothing but love and respect for you. However, it is time that we rock the Urza's Legacy printing, so aesthetic change, but a very important one. Otherwise, we're sticking with the same main deck. It has been very good for me, all things considered. Our results tapered off a bit last month, but I think variance is to account for at least some of that. And you'll note that I'm still kind of pre-boarded to grind, and the reason for that is not because I'm metagaming against midrange and control, but because I believe in being proactive in the main deck as much as possible, and in our deck what that means is executing our plan of discard into card advantage or threat that threatens to end the game into repeated disruption and interaction. So for that reason, I think cards like Dark Confidant and Tireless Tracker are basically proactive in the context of our game plan. Therefore, 4 Dark Confidant, 3 Tireless Tracker. Some people say it's a little much, some people say it's a little slow and grindy. I think it's actually proactive in kind of a roundabout way, and doing that in the main deck allows us to be a little bit more specific with our hate in the side, and just lets us find those cards and lets us chain together plays in game 1 where we're not at risk of flooding as much, we're not at risk of land screw as much, and we are just playing threats that eventually can snowball. That's the whole concept behind our deck. So the main deck remains unchanged, and we're going to look at the sideboard. And as you can see, we have 2 brand new inclusions. Now, if you want my detailed thoughts about these 2 cards, Liliana's Triumph and Ashiok Dream Render, you can check my War of the Spark spoiler video. But just to briefly touch on them here, I think both cards have really good potential for the archetype. I think Liliana's Triumph is playable right now, but it's actually something that kind of future-proofs our archetype more than really boosts it right now. In other words, it doesn't really do anything right now that's that much better than what we already have access to. The Edict effect is not strictly necessary, but it's nice enough, and there are enough potential upsides to this card that I'm still interested in playing it. But basically, I wouldn't go overboard with Triumph right now. unless you have a ton of Bogles or something like that in your local meta. but the more powerful Modern becomes over the course of time, the higher the stock of this card is likely to rise. So I'm going to test it as a 1-of in the sideboard for now. I think it's very playable in that number, in that position. I think it is certainly testable in higher numbers and or in the main deck as well. But personally speaking, I would remain moderate with this card if your goal is to design the best possible list at this exact moment. If you want to test it, you want to go crazy, no big deal. But for now, 1-of in the side for me. Ashiok Dream Render, I think it also belongs in the sideboard for sure. Also just a 1-of for now until I see exactly how the power level of this card feels. The biggest appeal to this card, the biggest draw, is how good it is against the Valakut decks, which are our worst top-tier matchup, right? The only matchup that might be worse than the Valakut decks is Living End, and Living End is just not really a top-tier deck, thankfully for us. However, as fate would have it, Ashiok is also quite nice against Living End with that kind of repeatable Tormod's Crypt style ability. Ashiok puts in a lot of work against a lot of the meta to varying degrees of success, right? It comes in against Tron. Now, most of Tron's searching and tutoring will be done before turn 3. However, if they have a little bit of a slower start, if we can disrupt them earlier like we're supposed to anyway, Ashiok can come down and be a further way to close the door on those effects. Arguably even better than hosing searches from Tron will be, again, the early disruption against the graveyard decks, followed by Ashiok repeatedly exiling the yard. This is going to be good against a whole lot of stuff, from Dredge to potentially Phoenix. Storm, again, it depends on the rest of your Grave Hate package, and then, of course, the static ability against War Prison, against Court of Calling style decks. There's all kinds of other stuff. Again, for my more detailed thoughts, see the other video. But right now, I'm going to try Ashiok as a 1-of, Liliana's Triumph as a 1-of. So what has to make way? Well, basically, I was almost tempted to just keep this entire column intact and just say, I am so incredibly loaded down with Graveyard Hate, and I think you should be loaded down with a variety of Graveyard Hate right now, between your Scoozes and Kalidas' main deck, and between a nice mix of stuff like this on the side. That said, there is such a thing as being a little bit too heavy on these effects, and so I'm kind of replacing one similar card with another, and the card that makes way in this particular case is a Grafdigger's Cage. Now, I've been pretty high on Grafdigger's Cage as exactly a 1-of. It's been totally fine, but if you think of the Court of Calling decks where it does some work, the Collected Company style decks where you want Cage, Ashiok has some overlap there. Of course, they have overlap against the graveyard decks, but again, remember that the big appeal to Ashiok is shutting down the search from Valakut, shutting down the search from Primeval Titan, whether it be in a Valakut deck or an Amulet Titan, and then has broader application besides. So I think that's kind of the like-for-like change, and I think that is very testable. Of course, Ashiok is slower, but that's why, again, we have the 1 mana or 0 mana interaction to kind of lead the way. Even like discard into Scooz against some of these decks like Dredge is a very viable start, and if you can follow up with a turn 3 Ashiok, very, very nice. So we have the early interaction, we have to keep that. Grafdigger's Cage is kind of the static hate piece, and we're replacing one static hate piece with another. So we'll see how it works out for us, but that's the change there. And then to make way for our Liliana's Triumph, well, my first potential cut was Deathmark. I'm kind of in the minority now playing this card. And of course it is limited at sorcery speed, it's relatively narrow, but I still think that having access to a 5th 1 mana removal spell is pretty nice. It is definitely a big weakness of green-black compared to Abzan with access to Path to Exile or Jund with access to Lightning Bolt. Like, we really miss that 5th CMC 1, or even beyond that, copies 6 and 7 even sometimes, of a piece of spot removal. So I still think there's a lot of decks where Deathmark is really good against in the meta. So my first instinct was, Liliana's Triumph is often going to trade 1-for-1, so do we replace our other 1-for-1 option with it? I almost did that. But then I said, you know what, my deck has been feeling the clunk just a tad lately. I really want to retain access to Deathmark. And so what else has to get cut? Well, remember that we're kind of at the top end of our threat count in the main deck. So I thought about cutting Liliana the Last Hope because she can be clunky in multiples. She's a card I love, I'm very high on, but you know, you could argue that, again, we're a little bit too clunky. But there is synergy with Liliana the Last Hope and Liliana's Triumph, and she really is just a game winner in a lot of situations. So in the end, rather than cutting Deathmark, rather than cutting Last Hope, I am going to, for now, cut the Kitchen Finks. This makes us even softer to burn than we already are with this build. This build is not teched up against burn whatsoever. We've got 3 Thoughtseize instead of just 2. We've got 4 Dark Confidant instead of just 3. We've only got 2 Collective Brutality in the 75. We don't have Duress. We don't have anything else anti-burn. And now we're losing our Finks. Well, that is true, but Finks is also the outlier in a few different ways. Finks is really nice in grindy mirrors. There's no question about that. But so is Liliana's Triumph. I think Liliana's Triumph is going to be performing pretty well in a lot of the mid-range style mirrors that that Kitchen Finks is fine in. And then, of course, the other cards we were looking to lose, like Deathmark or Last Hope, are good there as well, especially Last Hope, right? So Finks is just kind of one of many cards that fills that role. It's also an outlier right now in my current build. It's the only double green card, so moving away from the Finks allows my mana base to be a little bit cleaner relative to my spells. And again, the big glaring omission is Burn, but Burn is on the downswing. Burn is not a deck I'm scared of, and Liliana's Triumph, I guess, can come in against Burn. Just another instant speed kill spell, and one that does have the upside. We already really want to be on the Liliana plan against Burn if we can be. So maybe Liliana's Triumph comes in. Not that it's a shining star against Burn, it might be more because I don't have much better to do. Got to get some of these bad cards out of my main deck, but that's what we're going with. I hope I don't just get burned out of a bunch of games, but despite not really respecting Burn with my choices thus far, I rarely lose to it. I think our natural matchup is fine. Remember how good cards like Inquisition of Kozilek, Scavenging Ooze, Tarmogoyf, Liliana of the Veil, Kalitas Traitor of Get are relatively painless mana base. Remember Collective Brutality, of course. Remember how good all of that stuff still is against Burn. So we're going shields down against Burn with this build, my friends. But I am very excited to try out the new tech of Triumph and of Ashiok. The more I zoom in on this art, the more it grows on me. I kind of hated it at first, and I almost wanted to just wait till the promo is released to even get my hands on a copy. But again, like I said at the beginning of the video, you know, you're a working parent, you gotta take your spots. So this is my spot. We've got the regular art. Yeah, I don't know how great it is. It is growing on me a little bit. It's interesting. Either way, we've got the Urza's Legacy Treetop Village art, so all is well on the artistic front. So you guys will have to let me know what you think. The one card that didn't make the cut that I talked about being playable from War of the Spark is Blast Zone. I'm just not going to Blast Zone quite yet. Tron is still a major deck to beat. I've talked to a couple Patreon supporters about this in various messages, how, you know, if we want to accommodate Blast Zone and 3 Field of Ruin, it's going to require some rejigging of the mana base, maybe try out an Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. I'm not ready to commit to that yet. I'm just going to play without Blast Zone for the moment. I think it's a viable card. I look forward to hearing other people's experiences with it, but for now, I'm going to keep the mana base as is, and we're going to see how far it takes us. So let me know what you think, my friends. I always look forward to hearing the feedback from all of you on this, as in the gameplay. Now, speaking of gameplay, of course, we're going to do plenty of competitive leagues coming up with this list, but I also think I'm going to do, if there's interest, a draft for the channel. I'm not much of a limited player. You will see me out of my comfort zone, out of my wheelhouse, but I think I'm going to do a War of the Spark draft. It looks really fun, so that's live in a couple days here. Let me know if you would like to see that. Probably going to give it a shot anyway and see how it's received, but of course the focus of the channel remains on the Golgari mid-range, on the competitive leagues, and on Modern. So let's leave it there. Thank you so much, my friends. Thanks again to Stefano, to Jay, and to Tyler, and indeed to all of the other Patreon supporters. If you like this content, please consider supporting me on Patreon. It would mean a lot to me. It does enable me to keep doing what I'm doing with the regularity that you've come to expect. And please remember to like, share, comment, and of course subscribe to the channel. On our quest to 1,000 YouTube subs, that would be amazing. So, yeah, I will talk to you guys soon. I hope you have a great night, and I will see you for some gameplay. Take it easy.